Hello guys, welcome to Young African Trap TV series. I'm really excited to have you guys stay tuned on today's show. Smile on me. I have a fine bobo today on the show from the tech sector. Yeah, you can see it again. I have Henry Mascot, people. He's the co-founder and CEO of Curacel Systems, an AI-powered claims management system, and is also into fraud detection system for health insurers in Africa. I'm really excited because today we're going to be learning more about this company. Let's know how to detect fraud with Curacel Systems. You want to know more? We're back. Don't touch that.
TrepAfrica. Imagine more.
Welcome back. This is Young African Trap TV. So remember, I said I have a purpose-driven entrepreneur in the tech sector today on the show. I'm really excited. This is Mascot, ladies and gentlemen. Henry Mascot. Hi, Mr. Mascot. How are you doing today?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here as well. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about your startup story. How did that begin? I know I said a couple of things about your company, but then I feel to hear from the horse's mouth from the best.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your startup story.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur from when I was like very little, 10 years old. So I remember my dream used to be to, build a conglomerate, right? So I've always been passionate about building businesses. This current one I started right out of a tech program called Mascot Africa. So it's basically a school where if you want to build a big global business, software business, you take in a cohort and then you get a bit of, it was sort of like a mini MBA for Africans in technology space. So right out of there, so I went through that program, and after the program you typically start a company. So I was thinking about, what do I start? For me, the thesis for the companies that I've started in the past, even going forward, is something that makes impact using exponential technology. So right out of Mascot, we're looking for what problems to solve. The biggest problems we have in Africa are infrastructural problems in healthcare, in education. So back then, the biggest problem I could think of that I've experienced was in healthcare. It was with managing healthcare data. So the stats then were like, 95% of hospitals were offline, were using paper systems. And I remember back then it was surprising because I think I saw one stat that said 200 and something thousand people die every year from medical errors in the US. And I thought about, if this was in the US where they have like all the systems, how about like Africa where there's nothing, right? So yeah, for me it's about impact. It's about using the latest technologies. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, now let's talk about how it all began for you. I understand that you went to Mascot, and I think gave it an edge or the inside and foresight of what you really want to do for yourself. So how did it actually begin for you to be a co-founder and of course the CEO of Curacel Systems?
Before Mascot, I started a business that was Coworking Space. It's first Coworking Space. Enugu was a city that has about 13 high institutions, so very young population. Lots of young people, but this was maybe 6 years ago, but there was no tech ecosystem. Even the tech ecosystem in Lagos was very young then, but 6 years ago it was very nascent in Enugu. So me and my co-founder then, we wanted to rebuild a community where we could help train entrepreneurs, bring developers together, people who were interested in tech like us, someplace they could come together and do things together. So, but when we were doing that, when we were running that co-working space, I realized that I didn't have a lot of education in terms of how to run a technology business. So back then, I also had a friend who used to be a CEO. They'd gone to Demo Africa. He was Ghanaian, gone to Silicon Valley. She was like, listen, you're hardworking, you guys are smart, but sometimes you just need knowledge, right? So you should apply to the school and come get a bit of the knowledge that you need. So after that, so I now had a bit of knowledge, and so when we started Curacel, it was easier because you had a network of people you could like talk to. You understood how to do the business, how to manage product, how to manage sales. So it was a bit easier for us to now launch in and do Curacel.
I love that. Okay, now let's talk about while in school? What university did you go to? And I understand that your picture was to have a big conglomerate and all that.
Yeah.
So how back in school, let's relate it right
back to where. So for me, right, I've always had clarity in terms of what I wanted to do with my life. So I knew I wanted to do technology business right from before primary school. Started writing code when I was in secondary school, and so this was the early 2000s, so it's very early. So now it's mainstream, but it was very early then. So back then in school, I wanted to study computer science and engineering because, like I said, I wanted to do computer. I didn't end up studying that, thanks to the Nigerian education system. People who wanted their phones configured. That was my first business in school. Set up phones, set up laptops, do the operating system. So that was sort of my first hustle gig. And then towards the end of university, we now started a software outfit where we were building software for companies. I remember my first client was Enugu Chamber of Commerce. So it was this trade union. So I built their first website back then, early 2000s. So that was our first company. We did that. And then we did MTN. So me and my co-founder back then, we did MTN Developer Challenge. This is maybe around 2011, 2012, MTN Developer Challenge, and we won the education category. So we built an app for students that help them, manage their CGPA all throughout school. So it was for universities, polytechnics, all through that. So that was our first our first proper tech venture. I was in school, I had this vision, I had this dream, and it was validated because we started ventures, we got clients, we got validation from MTN. So for me, my path was set that this thing I wanted to do, I was getting traction on it. It was it. So we're just going to keep going. Yeah.
About Curacel Systems, what is the organization about? Tell me, let's have a clear in-depth of
what it's about. Yes, but like we said, when we started, we looked at a problem that had to do with managing medical information, and then the ecosystem, healthcare ecosystem as a whole, how we could digitize the ecosystem, create platforms that connect people to make sure that the information you need you have it at the right time, so that people who need care can get the care. So that was sort of the thesis for how we started. But since our thesis is to solve problems that nobody is solving, right? So we started looking at the lower end of the hospitals. What solutions could we create? But then when we got into that, we also saw that there was a bit of a mismatch in terms of paying. They weren't used to paying. There were a lot of infrastructural problems. So as a business, we started looking at how can we still solve a problem for these guys, but find a model where someone else can sort of pay for them and all that. So we ended up solving a problem for insurance companies. So we realized that sometimes they were being defrauded by people who they were taking care of. They were being defrauded by some of their partners. And then we realized that we could use some technology to automate some of all these things. There were lots of backlogs in the system, lots of inefficiency. We can automate a lot of things using artificial intelligence. So our first client paid us to run a paid pilot. So for us, right from the beginning, we had validation as well that, okay, listen, this is going to work. And since then, we've moved on to, provide services across Africa. So we've had very big insurance companies that are corporates across the continent, start to use our service. So yeah.
I love that. Well done. Okay, now let's dive more into Curacel System, because I don't know. It's just amazing that fraud really happens in the healthcare insurance system. So how exactly does Curacel System help detect fraud in the healthcare system?
Yeah, so fraud is a very multifaceted problem. It's a very big problem, right? You can't really say that you solve it, but what you can do is you keep reducing it, and as we know, the more you reduce it, the more it becomes advanced. So it's a living organism. Just like there's fraud in every sector, in every business there's fraud. What we do, so it's a lot of things, but the most basic part of what we do is at every insurance company there are people who are called claims adjusters, right? So they try and for every single procedure, for every single claim that comes in, they go into detail. This diagnosis doesn't match the care items that come in, right? So they do, that's part of what they do. So for every single insurance company as well, they have tariffs with the hospitals or with the pharmacy or with the, so they go through, okay, if you provide this service, this is the amount of money you should charge for it, right? So we build a system that takes into all these things into place. So did you go to the hospital? So we need to verify that you went to the hospital. So we have checks that we built in that verifies that you go to the hospital. And then we check when a claim comes in, we check, okay, the person has plasmodiasis, that's the technical name for malaria.
Yes, okay.
And then the drugs that you've sent, does it match that? So we have an AI system that mimics what a human being would do, like maybe 100 times faster than what a human being would do, right? Because it's automated. So instead of having to manage 30,000 claims by having people go through it one by one, the thing with insurance, health insurance in Nigeria is it's a growing market. It's about 3% of the population, right? But it's growing, it's a growing market. And so as that market grows, the costs for administering a health insurance company also grows. So we partner with insurance companies to keep their costs low as they scale. So if you used to process 5,000 claims a month, as you start to process 50,000 claims a month, you don't need to hire 2 million people to do that. Like our system would support you, that you don't have to scale your staff, right? But you grow your business without having to grow your staff necessarily, right?
I love that. I mean, you sound so interested, and I understand that you really love this job. I mean, it's coming from you.
It's all we do every day. Like it's all we do 23 hours a day.
I see you're passionate about it.
Thank you very much.
When we come back after this tea break, we'll talk about we'll talk about the best in being a techpreneur for yourself.
Okay.
We'll be back.
Okay.
TrepAfrica. Imagine more.
Welcome back. This is the Young African Trep TV series, and if you're just joining us, well, you've not missed a lot. I am with the co-founder and CEO Curacel Systems, in person of Mr. Mascot, Henry Mascot, actually. Did I mention earlier, for those who have been joining us, that he was a recipient of the 2012 MTN Developer Challenge Award in Nigeria for building a successful breakthrough edtech application for students in tertiary institutions. Well, I guess I didn't mention. Now you know. I'm really excited to have you right here.
Thank you.
I mean, you know my conversations, you don't know. Okay, now let's talk about, before we went on the break, I said we're going to talk about what's the best thing for you being a technology. So let's talk about it.
Right. So for me, the most important, the best thing of being a technology entrepreneur is the fact that you can make. I remember what one of my mentors used to say. Jon Lissigan is the founder of meltwater.com. He used to say that opportunity, talent is universal, but opportunity is not. So in technology, entrepreneurs or young people in Africa have the same opportunity. We have the same ability to create groundbreaking innovations as our colleagues in other parts of the world, right? If you have a computer and you can write code, you can create the next Facebook, you can create the next Google, you can create the innovation, right? You need the business model to scale it, but you can create groundbreaking innovation. So for me, the best part of being a technology entrepreneur is the ability to do so much with so little. Right, so that's for me the best part, being able to do so much with so little.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about you being a techpreneur. I understand everyone wakes up every morning, as an entrepreneur, you have a purpose-driven life. This is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. But then you have some things you don't really like being an entrepreneur. So let's talk about, you've talked about the best entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Let's talk about one thing or the other you don't like being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship is hard, even in technology. It is hard. It is a hard journey. And not enough is said about how hard it is. And especially in this time, it's very sexy to be an entrepreneur, especially in a country like Nigeria where lots of people are forced to become entrepreneurs because there are not jobs. the unemployment rate is like ridiculous, right? 20-something%. And like people say, it's a lonely journey, right? Even if sometimes if you have co-founders, it's easier, right? If you have co-founders, it's easier. In the beginning, I started with co-founders who left, and then I found my current co-founder who's like the best ever, right? So it's easier if you have, but it's a tough journey in the sense that there's always fire to put out, right? You never really go to the beach, right? There's a book I like to read every couple of years. I'm reading it right now by Ben Horowitz, the hard things about the hard things, right? He talks about his journey of being an entrepreneur, and for him it's wartime. So there's a difference between a wartime CEO or founder and a peacetime CEO or founder. Peacetime is everything is jolly. You come in, you guys laugh, you're always meeting your targets. Everything is fine. But I feel like as an entrepreneur in Nigeria, like I think it's always wartime. Right, because there are lots of things that are just going wrong fundamentally from being in this country, right? Like there's no infrastructure, like power. You need lots of money to run a functional office. Like because you're in Nigeria, everybody's trying to survive. You're certain type of, if you don't hire the right people, you'll have a culture where it's full of like survivors, people who are just looking to shortcut you. Looking for like the best. It's just really, it's wartime all the time. And so as a founder, as a CEO, you're trying to win because you're accountable to like the board, to your investors. So you have this people you have this group of people you're accountable to, and you also need to deliver on your vision. And then you also need to manage expectation of your employees, your colleagues. So it's being an entrepreneur is it's for the strong, right? It's for the strong.
Yeah. Okay, now let's go forward. Now we understand that you started with it's 4 years now, let's officially, or how would I put it? But then let's talk about the challenges you faced starting out before we now talk about the current challenges you face.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest challenges in that early stage was being able to get that first client to pay, and it was access, right? That's the biggest challenge, right? Access, especially when you're an outsider. So I was young, I was in my early 20s, right? And I was getting into an industry that I wasn't really like part of. It wasn't like I was 40 years old and I've been working in healthcare or insurance for because that helps. Right. This is also like one hack that you have. So these days there's a lot of hype around being like in your 20s and you're an entrepreneur. It's cool. There are lots of advantages because you can take lots of risk. You're not married. You don't have any kids. You're not like taking care of anybody. So you can take lots of risk. But it also comes with a bit of its downside. So you don't have a lot of experience with managing people. You don't have the networks to take your product to market unless you maybe have lots of advisors in that space. So for me, it was access, and it was access to do things like customer acquisition. It was access to do fundraising. So it's fundamentally being able to access the right people, right? And it's a problem we kept facing for a long time.
What are all the challenges you're facing right now that you still find it hard to tackle?
Yeah.
Let's talk about them.
The people who come to work every day, you're actually in charge of determining what their lives become, because people spend the bulk of their lives in your office, right? People spend more time in the office with you than anywhere else. So you can actually start seeing that we keep saying Nigeria is bad, people are not doing well, people have bad values, but you see as an employer that you actually have the opportunity to shape people, right? So for me, that's actually one thing now that, I wouldn't say worries me, but I have to think. And the thing is, the weird thing is, it's not, I was saying, I forgot who I was saying this to, it's not, your goals are revenue goals, right? Your goals are signing customers, increasing revenue. Worrying about how people culture is not really like a business goal. It doesn't affect it's not a bottom line goal, but you notice it changes everything, right? Because how people behave determines how they hit the goals, determines how they, perform, it determines everything. So for me now, it's it's the challenge that I'm having to worry about.
I think that's like a couple of challenges.
All wrapped into one,
I'm
eh?
telling you.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the government.
Yeah.
A lot of people complain about the government not helping them. Let's see if your story is different. How do you think the government is being helpful? And how do you think they need to improve, to develop your company?
So I think indirectly you benefit a lot, maybe from tax cuts, from lots of policies that you might not see. But I wouldn't say. I would say that I've probably benefited from a government, especially from government of Lagos State, because I think they have a program called ETF, right? So yeah, Lagos Innovates. I've benefited from that. So I would actually say, like, in my journey, I was with an entrepreneur yesterday, and I was telling him, like, if it wasn't for a few programs, because I started the business like bootstrapping, right? And if it wasn't for some of his programs, like, we probably wouldn't have survived, right? So so from Lagos Innovates, we've benefited from them. The programs they do. So these days, it's easier for most entrepreneurs, it's easier to work out of. So in the beginning, like, you started working out of Coworking Spaces, and Lagos Innovates back then, I think they still do it now. They discount, they give vouchers that help you get discounted spaces. They give working capital to entrepreneurs as well. So for me, I would say that indirectly, I think I would have benefited from the government. I might not know exactly in what way. I know tax is one of it, because like in small business, you get a bit of tax cut. I also saw something over the past couple of days around if you're a company that you earn a certain less than a couple, like, I think 25 million or something, you're going to get like tax cuts for a couple of years. So that is one way that I would say that, but for me directly, for our company directly, I would say that we have benefited from the Lagos State government, from Lagos Innovates. But where we've added value as a company is, so they have like maybe 200, 300 entrepreneurs. So every Saturday back then, would go to a particular school, and then we teach them entrepreneurship, teach them how to pitch, right? And I would say that for us, we've supported some of the companies, we've supported because we also give them a bit of funding, right? So we help them, teach them, because we've been through lots of, because I've also had the opportunity to go through lots of international programs where we were taught how to like present, so programs in Dubai, in Cape Town, like in France. So I have lots of all these experiences in terms of how to pitch. So we take that value and then we give back, right? So the government, I would say that the government has helped us directly in one regard, and then we also try to be part of their programs to also help other people. Right? Yes.
That's a very good one.
Yes.
And is there room for improvement also?
No, definitely. So if government, I love what the Lagos State government is doing. If other state governments can learn how to do that, or even the federal government can have initiatives like that, because funding, I would think, is one of the biggest values that you can create. Then even outside funding, like I said, platforms that you might not necessarily give funding, but where you connect entrepreneurs who have some traction in the market with, young ones, those things, you go a long way. I don't want to talk about road, power, all those things. Other people are already talking about it, right?
Those ones are like challenges that can be inevitable challenges.
Yeah, so let me just say the one that has to do with technology and the space, right?
Well done, I need to say. Okay, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll ask more questions. So stay tuned for more questions to come.
TrepAfrica. Imagine more.
Welcome back. I am still with Henry Mascot, the prolific. We're committed to call him the prolific entrepreneur. Different in his own thinking. I like the fact that I'm having a conversation with you, and it hasn't been boring. It just shows how purpose-driven you become for yourself and all that. Beautiful. Okay, now let's quickly talk. Do you talk about giving back to the society? Fantastic. It's beautiful. That brings us to the advice you have for young entrepreneurs out there, people who are striving to become someone for themselves. So I think that brings us to the last question of today's show. What's your advice for
them? I understand not all of us have a why in the beginning, but try and keep looking for it, find it. Like Steve Jobs said, we connect the dots looking backwards. So look backwards and just look for what your passions are, what motivates you. But if you're starting a business, right, a business is to make money, right? But I almost feel that while you make money, businesses drive massive change, right? I don't think I finished reading it, but a couple of weeks ago I was reading Prosperity Paradox by Efosa and Christiansen, right? And I was talking about how a lot of the changes that have happened in Africa were because of businesses. So businesses, we have the opportunity, we have the power to change the world. Like if you see the amount of money that has gone into NGOs and they've not made as much dent, right? If that amount of money had gone into businesses, because what happens with businesses is you don't empower people by giving them arms, you empower them by giving them economic prosperity, right? By helping them create wealth for themselves, right? And as entrepreneurs, that's what we do, right? Because when you start a business, you are able to hire people, you're able to employ people. And then when those people come into your organization, they see your work ethic, they see your drive, they see your passion, it motivates them to do their own thing. So when they leave your organization, they can start their own thing.
Thank you so much, Henry.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed every bit of my conversation with you today. It was distilling. It was full of thoughts. It was full of education. I mean, I was educated all the while. Thank you so much. And I understood that every of my audience, the audience, actually have picked one or two things from the show. I think that's a wrap up today's show. Yes. I'm really excited to have been here. To have a very beautiful.
Thank you.
A prolific entrepreneur. I can call you any names. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Right? Thank you for the platform.
To entrepreneurs out there, like he said, you have control over everything you want to do. You have the power to make your decisions. You have the power to become whoever you want to be. You have the power to become great. Yes, so why don't you just sit to yourself right now? I have the power to become great. And there's this favorite thing about Richard Branson, which I like so much. He said, so every resourceful thing out there, entrepreneurs are the most greatest tool. To be an entrepreneur is the most greatest tool. So if you're an entrepreneur, let's say congratulations. Just keep being consistent in whatever you're doing. Keep being yourself. You have the power to do anything. Did you see that? Anything. Thank you so much, guys. Until I see you next time, don't forget to click on the subscribe button on our YouTube channel at TrepAfrica, and on Instagram, don't forget to always follow us on TrepAfrica. Keep commenting, keep sharing, spread the good news. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
TrepAfrica. Imagine more.